My F50 daughter-in-law, 24F, gave birth and doesn't seem to want a relationship with me, making it difficult to have a relationship with my son, 31 male, and new granddaughter. Hello Reddit, TLDR, I'm looking for advice on how to build a relationship with my daughter-in-law, and get over the rift she's causing since giving birth. My son, David, 31, has been married to my daughter-in-law, B, 24, since September of 2020. Due to the pandemic I never really got to know her because they only dated for about a year before they got married, and I didn't know about her until they had dated for about 6 months. I love my son very much, but I feel like our relationship has been rocky since they get married. He has a daughter from a previous relationship who is 10, and since they got together I haven't had the same relationship with her. I know this is partially because he moved out of my house, very suddenly without really saying anything I may add, and I no longer get her on his weekends. I try to get them to bring her to visit when they have her, but usually I only see her once a month or so, and lately it has felt like she has been more distant when she visits. I think this is because B says negative things about me around her, and I find that unfair. They just had a baby at the end of January. She was induced due to preeclampsia and in labor for 3 days before having a C-section. I had been in an accident a few weeks prior and don't have a vehicle, and my son refused to pick me up to be there for the labor at all or to see the baby in the hospital, but her parents got to see the baby and were in the parking lot the entire time. I called him while she was in labor a few times, but on the second day after her water broke I called him and heard her snap at him to get off the phone and he refused to accept any calls after that. I just wanted to, no THST. The 3 of them were okay though. She was in the hospital 2 days after the C-section, and they wouldn't stop to visit me on their way home after the birth because she was hurting, even though she had painkillers she could have taken and she didn't feel right according to my son. This is when I became concerned she had PPD. My daughter ended up picking up her prescriptions and some groceries for them and got to see the baby that night. Her and B have a relationship that is apparently pretty good. I was supposed to visit a couple days after they got home, but she ended up insisting something was wrong and went back to the doctor who apparently sent her to the hospital. My son told me they diagnosed her with postpartum preeclampsia, but I was pretty certain that that was only something that happened during pregnancy and went away after birth, so I was pretty sure he was confused. The day after they admitted her again, 5 days after the baby being born with everyone meeting her but me, was my birthday. I called her around 8 that morning to see what was really going on but she didn't answer. A while later my son called me and wished me a happy birthday and asked why I had called B. I admit I snapped at him and said she should be returning my call, because I called her. I hung up on him and maybe 5 minutes later she called me. I told her she should have called me and that I wanted to hear her voice and hear from her what was going on since my son gets confused. I then asked her if this was a mental or physical issue, and she went silent before saying physical. I asked if she was sure, and she got kind of snippy and said they had padding on her bed because she was a seizure risk and she couldn't be alone with her newborn, so she was pretty sure. I didn't comment on her tone because I was sure she was stressed. She was released her the next day, and they came and visited me while I was at my daughter's watching her 2 kids on their way home so I could say, the baby. I offered her some pillows to sit on. My son said she basically gave birth both ways. Even though I knew this wasn't true, I wondered if she had some soreness that made him think this, and she refused my hospitality saying she was fine and felt pretty good. 2 weeks later my son picked me up and brought me to their home to visit. I stayed for a few hours, and she didn't really make any effort to talk to me. She was just quiet and sat on the couch. When my son took me home I asked why she was so unhospitable, and he said I had been rude while she was in the hospital. That she shouldn't have had to call me, and that I shouldn't have asked if it was a mental or physical problem because he had already told me it was physical. He also said I shouldn't have posted anything on Facebook before her about the baby being born, and that I was rude when he called to make me take it down. She doesn't post on social media very often so I didn't think it would be a big deal. He hasn't picked me up to see the baby because he says he needs to be there to help with the baby, and they won't bring the baby to me because he says the baby isn't allowed in my house. I told my son I'm planning to quit my job to babysit for them, but I haven't even gotten her return to work date and she hasn't once thanked me for doing it. Overall I feel like she's holding on to some very petty things and is using them to keep me from my son and granddaughters. I want a relationship with her, but I am missing some critical bonding time with the baby and I am going to struggle to forgive her for it. Especially over petty nonsense she won't even bring up to talk to me. I'm really wanting to send a text and lay all my feelings out for her and just hash it out, but I understand there are probably cultural differences at play with all of this too, so I could use some advice on what to say. Commenter, lady, if you don't pull your head out of your ass, you're not going to be part of their lives at all. You're not owed nearly any of what you seem to think you are. When it comes to their baby, they don't owe you crap. 1. Your son had 2 priorities when his wife was in labor. His wife and their baby. Not you. He didn't have time to come pick you up or talk to you on the phone. Have you ever heard of a taxi cab? 2. She shouldn't have to take a pain pill just so they can stop by and see you on their way home. How incredibly selfish of you. They did the right thing and went straight home. 3. Are you seriously questioning a doctor's diagnosis? Do you really think it's appropriate to ask her if it's physical or mental? Are you mental? 4. You're lucky anyone called you back at all. They are tired and are learning how to care for their newborn, and that is after your dill had a complicated labor and delivery and complications after birth. No one has the emotional bandwidth to deal with your entitlement. 5. You inconvenienced your son and had him pick you up and drive you home. Again, taxi, Uber, Lyft were better options. Then you're complaining his wife, who is exhausted and still healing, was inhospitable. I'm guessing she was saying plenty to you in her head but was too polite to actually verbalize it. 6. Do they even want you babysitting their baby? Did they actually ask this of you, or did you just decree that this is what is happening? 7. You do not post baby news on Facebook without the parents' permission. You were rude and overstepping. 8. If you want to send them a text, send them a sincere apology for being a pushy, entitled, pain in the ass, and promise you'll behave better in the future. 1. If he would have came the first night before she was in real labor, he wouldn't have needed to talk to me. We don't have taxi cabs, and the Uber would have been well put of my budget. 2. She refused to take any of the painkillers once discharged, period. That was selfish of her. And I had food for them too, so my son wouldn't have had to cook. It wasn't just for me to see the bye. 3. No, I was questioned if my son had the right information. He's relayed wrong things before. 4. I understand that from her perspective after reading some of the comments. However, in my family it's just common to call back regardless, especially after having a baby. I see it's a cultural difference. 5. I can't Uber to where they live, otherwise I would be there every day. If that was an option, I would have definitely jumped on it instead of having him pick me up, but Uber isn't either tiny town. 6. I told my son after I heard me telling my daughter about her struggle to find reputable daycare without a year-long wait and how she was scared for the safety of her baby. They won't have to worry if I watch her. 7. My son just said not to post pictures. I didn't realize announcing I was a grandma again would be a big deal. I deleted it. 8. I told my son I was sorry for hurting her feelings when he told me. I've always apologized to him when he's told me I've done something wrong in her eyes, whether I think it was wrong or not. I don't want to hurt her feelings ever. I want her to know she doesn't have to run to my son though, she can come to me. And I want a chance to explain myself to her. I'm seeking advice on getting grandparent rights in Indiana. My son has 2 daughters with 2 different women. The oldest is 10, and he and her mother were never married, no custody agreement, they just have an informal agreement. The youngest is almost 2 months old, and he and her mother are married. I was under the impression that any grandparent could petition for custody/visitation in the US, but the way I'm reading it I can't unless my son is incarcerated or they aren't married? Is this correct? What do I need to do to seek joint custody of my granddaughters? What do I need to build a solid case? I've already tried resolving this without going this drastic, but his wife doesn't want to work with me. I can't travel to them currently. If I could, I would be over there as I could be. I have apologized even though I don't think I was wrong. If she felt slighted by anything I said, I apologized for it. Really, though, I don't think it should matter. You don't use kids as pawns. I can have a relationship with my granddaughters without her, or I should be able to. That's what I thought grandparents' rights were for. To make sure parents couldn't stop an essential relationship with grandparents without a damn good reason, like abuse, drug use, etc. Also, he didn't need my permission to move. I just didn't appreciate that he gave no indication he was leaving. Update 1. Well, I apologized to my daughter-in-law for all the things my son listed. Since I had received feedback about it being my son's job to handle his family, I told him my apologies to pass along, and then I waited. However, I got no response from B. No, thank you, no trying to bury the hatchet, nothing. So, last Friday I made an appointment with an attorney to discuss grandparents' rights and had that appointment on Tuesday. The lawyer told me I had a good chance with my older granddaughter, but would likely get nowhere with the baby. I filled out some paperwork to get the process started, but Tuesday night I was questioning if I was doing the right thing. I called one of my friends to discuss, and was seriously considering not moving forward with it after talking to her. Then yesterday I received this message from this is, I just wanted to let you know that, friend told us you're intending to go for grandparent rights, and also shared everything you've had to say about me. Let me first say that I have not once kept either of the girls from you, and I certainly have not kept, son from you. He is a grown-ass man, and if he wanted to talk to you he was free to. You have not asked to come over and visit since, son picked you up. You cannot expect us to 1 read your mind or 2, drop everything and come pick you up. We have a new baby, and we have our own lives. I also have not said a word to you about what happened during delivery/postpartum, because I have no energy to argue with you. Son said you apologized, and I told him I appreciated it, even though it was not a real apology. You apologize for what you did to hurt my feelings, not that my feelings were hurt. I don't have time for your drama. For the record, though, what you said was absolutely disgusting. I almost died. It had nothing to do with my mental health. Since you have decided to go for grandparents' rights, we will have no direct contact with you. All contact will need to go through our lawyer. You have been removed from my Facebook. You are not permitted to post any pictures you have been sent of my child on social media, and, older granddaughter's mom feels the same way regarding, older granddaughter We intend to have something written up by and sent to you by the end of the week regarding this, and ceasing contact with us. I assume we will be served with your visitation paperwork this week as well. You will get no pictures or phone calls going forward. In fact, you will be blocked. I also hope you realize you will absolutely lose this case. Your house is not suitable to live in, and you would have to be able to pass a drug test. When you lose, we will not resume contact with you. You lost your chance at being a part of our kids' lives by deciding to go to the most nuclear option instead of just communicating with us. I tried to respond to her and tell her that I didn't want to go through with it anymore, and I reacted pit of anger, but she wouldn't answer texts or calls, so I assume I really am blocked. I called my son to tell him about the text she sent, and he said he knew about it and it was a lot nicer than what he wanted to send me. So, that's where I'm at this point. I'm going to show my lawyer the text so that it can show how unwilling to forgive and to work with me she is, and hopefully it will resolve quickly so I can at least get visitation rights with my oldest granddaughter. Edit to add, I don't appreciate the nasty messages I have received or the barrage of nasty comments. I admit I made a mistake, but now this is my only option. It's clear that most of the responses from Reddit are from those of young people not from my generation, as I have gotten different responses in other online support groups from people my own age who are also grandparents, many from my own culture. She says that I would have to pass a drug test. I use medical marijuana to help with a chronic illness, but it is still illegal where I live. I am quitting entirely since this is a possibility, getting in trouble / YTF is your daughter a better mother? Because they need to have better cultural examples. For instance, the oldest mother is also not from our culture / race, and her hair is very different from her daughter's. She has no idea how to take care of her hair. It's always a mess. My daughter-in-law has taken some initiative in doing and styling her hair, but she's still not great at it. The girls need someone who can teach them how to handle basic things like taking care of their skin and hair. Oldest hair has been something I have encouraged them to let me handle long before daughter-in-law came into the picture. Not taking care of a child's hair is a form of neglect. My daughter knows how to do those things because her hair and skin are much closer to theirs and she can handle it with her own children. One last gem, I don't feel I deserve to be treated better, but equal. We are both equally important in my son's life. She is obviously more important in her daughter's life right now, but without me that baby wouldn't be here. I would drop the grandparents' rights case if I wasn't cut off. I reacted out of anger and desperation, but now it's the only option since I'm cut off. Title, Ida for removing my son from my will after our relationship ended? I really don't think I'm wrong, but I just need reassurance that I'm doing the right thing.
I, F50s, have a son, David, 30s, who is married to B, 20s.
They have a daughter who is 4 months old, and my son has a daughter from a previous relationship who is 10. B and I had a falling out after their baby was born, and my son and granddaughters got caught in the crossfire. The falling out happened in March, and I know I did and said things I wasn't proud of, and although she hasn't apologized I'm sure she feels the same way. It would be too long to go over the history, but at the most extreme point I did consult a lawyer for grandparent rights. During this time, my son had no contact with me, but when I dropped the grandparents' rights case I asked for things to go back to normal. My son expressed that he wanted things to go back to normal, but that a lot of damage had been done and he really didn't know if we could go back to normal. For Mother's Day, my daughter decided to take me out to dinner, and she begged David to go and bring the baby. Oldest was with mom. David eventually did agree on the condition it wasn't on Mother's Day, and he, the baby, and B came. B was quiet most of dinner, but did talk to my daughter a few times. I guess they have a pretty good relationship. B held the baby the entire time, and wouldn't let me hold or take pictures. Part of the falling out was over pictures and Facebook, so I found this to be petty. Overall, I would have called dinner a success. At the end I hugged my son and told him I was proud of him for putting his foot down and coming to dinner with his daughter, and that I hoped he could continue to do that. Looking back, I know I shouldn't have said anything. My son called me later that night and told me that he couldn't continue to have a relationship with me. He said that B was their child's mother, and he would never bring the baby anywhere without her blessing. I was drunk when he called because I've had a hard time coping, and I admit I lost it a little bit on the phone call and told him it was despicable that he couldn't man up to his wife, and that he should have come to see me on Mother's Day because I am his mother. He ended up hanging up on me. I called the next day and profusely apologized to him. I know it was wrong of me to have said what I did, and I told him I want a relationship with him. He told me he couldn't do this with me anymore. I have been heartbroken ever since, but I understand I guess. I called him last night and told him that I wouldn't be contacting him or his wife anymore ever, and that I respected that we wouldn't have a relationship. I also let him know I would be taking him off as my power of attorney and out of my will so he never had to be bothered with anything from me again. I don't have much anyways. He got mad at me and called me a sorry excuse of a mother, and now my daughter is saying I'm manipulative. I really don't understand how I was wrong in giving him what he wants. Update 2. Ida wouldn't let me post an update due my post being violent, so here we are. After someone posted a link to what I believe is my daughter-in-law's Reddit posts and I read some of the verbal beatings I got, I did some more reflection. I feel like her perspective of events really helped shift my view. I do want to point out there are several people who told me I was not wrong and that this younger generation has a poor view of family values. I really believe I was judged so harshly because there are so few parents / grandparents on Reddit. I went to my son and Dill's house but it was mostly empty. I was afraid of this after reading her post and some of the comments. I found the listing and it's been posted for almost a week and is currently pending, but I can't find where they moved to and all the photos are of the house mostly empty. I suspect they bought it under an LLC, so I am currently trying to figure out how to find out the name of the LLC and then find the house. I spoke to one of their neighbors and they said they moved most of their stuff out around the beginning of May, so my son kept this from me for quite a while and didn't even bother to mention it at dinner. I had a meeting with my therapist to help me through this, but am still a wreck. My son has just disappeared. I know everyone here is looking through my small 3,000 character limited posts and my Dill's long gripes about me, but my son wouldn't do this on his own. His wife is absolutely manipulative, but it doesn't change the fact I handled this all wrong and drove him further away. If I would have just sought out a relationship with my son and granddaughters without be, I don't think I would be here. I should have just played nice. One commenter said it when they asked me, do you want to be right or do you want to have a relationship with your son and granddaughter? And I choose wrong. My therapist told me to give myself some healing time before pursuing anything, but for now my plan is to just save some money and hire a private investigator to find my son and then rebuild my relationship and his trust so we can work to get him out from under her. Again, I recognize I was wrong in some of this. I recognize I was overly demanding and critical. I was wrong in some of this. But I didn't deserve this. People who use kids and grandkids as pawns are evil. I will probably continue to seek advice, but it certainly won't be from this account. And to whoever linked my other posts from my other account and told my Dill about this, screw you. Screw everyone here. I am far from being a devil. I am not evil. The person who is evil is the one who took my family completely away from me. My Dill has completely manipulated my son. I'll admit I was far from perfect, but I don't deserve what you people are saying about me. I hope one day you guys feel what it's like to lose your child and grandchild to a manipulative person who just wants to cut their family off. I am currently in the process of moving and have moved all of my things out of my old house and into my newly purchased home, leaving my old home empty until it sells. I had a neighbor that had a squatter issue a few years back, and I'm concerned that with my house being empty someone will break in and try to claim squatters' rights. Is this possible in Indiana, and would it stop the sale of the house? Update 3. My son passed away earlier this year. We had a really rocky relationship over the last year or so, which was mainly caused by his wife. They separated after he had a work-related accident that caused a TBI and had lasting effects on his personality, and she basically decided she couldn't do it and told him to get lost. They were separated when he passed away, but I don't know if divorce had been officially filed for. They had 2 children together supposedly, and he has an older daughter from a previous relationship. When I received the news of his death, I was able to see him before she had him cremated, and I requested some of his ashes from the funeral home, but my wishes were not honored, and I didn't want him cremated either, but obviously that wish was not honored either. I have reached out about a number of things, including his ashes and some belongings, and she is not willing to part with any of it even though they were separated. She claims that they should go to his supposed children along with all life insurance policies he had and his work settlement. I say supposed children because I have reason to believe her children are not his. Can I sue for his ashes and belongings? Is there a way to have a paternity test done so that way his belongings and ashes can go to his sister and I if we are the only living relatives? I don't understand why she would get them if they were separated and she abandoned him, and I feel like his actual living relatives would be entitled to everything. I am in Indiana, but they were located in Vermont. Commenter: if the breakdown was his wife's fault, why did he not reach out once separated? How do you know they were separated, and how long was it for? He did reach out before they were separated after his injury. His injury made him be able to stand up to her finally. I know they won't replace my son, but I would still like some things to remember him by. I will not be able to have a relationship with her or the kids if they are even his, because she nuked our relationship after giving birth to her oldest and did the same for me and his other daughter's mom. Commenter: the way you talk about your supposed grandchildren really doesn't sit right with me. Makes me think like you were to blame for the falling out, not her. If the supposed children were good enough for your son, that should be enough for you to treat them as such regardless of how you feel. Also, he's left children. That money will help with them. I want to feel sorry for you as you have lost your son, and I can't even begin to fathom that. But you just give out mean girl energy. I can't treat them anyway because their mother won't let me around them, and have convinced oldest mother as well. She has gotten everything including the last time with him and stole a year and a half of his life from me, and she abandoned him. Commenter: I'm beginning to see why she doesn't want you anywhere near her kids. Because it's a lot easier to just only have her family in her life, and she is selfish and evil and decided to tear my family apart over a personality clash and petty trivial things. Commenter: supposed kids, you mean your grandchildren? This post screams you just are about the money. I don't just want money, I just don't think it should go to her. I would like some of his things because I would like some things to remember him. He built things I would like to remember and have, and things he got from my mother I would like back. I have reason to believe they aren't his kids. Thank you for commenting. His beneficiaries just automatically at everything? His wife made us estranged, and I blame her for him being dead, and I just don't think it's fair she gets everything after leaving my son because of his disability, including the settlement money from his job when they finish settling. He died alone in a hotel because she wouldn't take care of him and was punishing him for talking to me after his injury made him stand up to her.